Before there was an Oscar on his shelf, before the global success of Oppenheimer, and even before his icy stare made Thomas Shelby a pop culture icon, Cillian Murphy was already quietly planning his next move. And now, he's made it official. He's stepping away from the big screen, not in scandal, not out of failure, but with intention. At the peak of his career, Cillian Murphy is walking toward something else, something quieter, something more personal. The news wasn't shouted from a red carpet or posted on social media. It came in a soft, thoughtful interview with Caroline Gaspitchwan that felt more like a conversation with an old friend than a press stop. In it, Murphy was clear. He's not retiring, he's just pausing, stepping back, choosing something different, at least for a while. And in doing so, he's reminding us that even the biggest stars sometimes need space to breathe. For those who followed his career from the start, this move probably won't come as a complete surprise. Cillian has never really craved the spotlight. While other actors chased fame, awards, and magazine covers, he always seemed to stand a little outside of it all. Despite starring in massive films Batman Begins, Inception, Dunkirk, Peaky Blinders, he rarely gave interviews, avoided red carpets whenever possible, and lived full-time with his wife and 2 sons in a quiet part of Ireland. To him, fame was never the goal. The work was, still, the timing surprised many. Why step back now, right after delivering one of the most celebrated performances of the decade? His role as J. Robert Oppenheimer pushed him to emotional and physical limits. He dropped weight, gave up sleep, and fully immersed himself in a man haunted by genius and guilt. The result was stunning. Critics praised him. Fans stood in awe. And when award season rolled in, his name was everywhere. But behind the applause was a man who had emptied himself out. For real, Cillian opened up about how exhausting the process really was. Playing Oppenheimer wasn't just a role, it was a 6-month mental descent into the mind of a man who built a weapon that changed the world. There was no room for laughs, no space for lightness. Murphy said he barely ate during filming, and after, he didn't want to celebrate. He just wanted to rest. In his own words, he wanted to go home, and that's what this next move is really about. Home. Cillian spoke about how the past 20 years had flown by in a blur of scripts, sets, locations, and long shoots. Being away from his family for months at a time, missing milestones, eating reheated dinners alone in hotel rooms. It hit him hard that while he was building an extraordinary career, the ordinary, everyday moments were quietly slipping past him in the background. In his rarely given interviews over the years, he's talked about this before, but people didn't always listen. He has a deep respect for family, for privacy, and for the life that exists outside movies. It's something he learned through balance, and, probably, through a bit of regret. His decision to step back now isn't dramatic, it's thoughtful, honest, and maybe even overdue. He doesn't have a flashy plan lined up. There's no streaming series announcement around the corner. No surprise blockbuster. Instead, he says he wants to write, to focus on smaller, creative things, to possibly return to the stage where it all began. He wants to work on projects that matter deeply, not just artistically, but personally. In a world where celebrity culture moves fast and louder always feels better, Cillian's choice to slow down feels radical in the best way. It's not running away. It's turning inward. It's taking back control. It's an artist closing one door not because it's slammed shut, but because he wants to open a different one, and that quiet bravery speaks volumes. This isn't the story of a man giving up. It's the story of a man choosing presence, choosing to see his boys grow up, choosing dinner tables over movie sets, choosing to breathe between roles instead of racing to the next one. At a time when Hollywood pressures actors to stay visible, trending, and meme-worthy, Cillian Murphy is showing us that fading out gently. On Your Own Terms can be a powerful story too. Before he was one of the most respected actors of his generation, before his name was printed on movie posters around the world, Cillian Murphy was just a quiet boy from Cork, Ireland. A boy who wasn't trained for the spotlight, who loved music, books, solitude. Someone far more comfortable in quiet rooms than center stage. And even now, standing at the edge of global fame. The core of that young boy is still there, calm, thoughtful, quietly observing the world around him. As a kid, Cillian wanted to be a rock star before he ever thought of acting. He and his brothers were obsessed with music and spent most of their teenage years in bands, writing songs, dreaming of playing festivals. Acting only happened later by accident, and even then, it started on small stages, in black box theaters with creaky stools and barely lit curtains. But there was something about performance that clicked with him, not the attention, but the connection. The way stories could make people feel, and that's exactly what would mark his entire career. Whether he was playing a lone survivor in a post-apocalyptic world, or a villain in a blockbuster, or a violent yet vulnerable crime boss in Peaky Blinders, Cillian always led with emotion, with truth. He didn't ask for the camera's attention, it just found him. Because even in silence, he was saying something. Over the years, people began to notice how different he was from many of his peers. No social media, no paparazzi chasing. He rarely explained his roles in interviews because he believed the performance should speak for itself. And even as his face became one of the most recognizable in modern film, he stayed committed to a simple truth. Acting is a job, not an identity. But even with that quiet philosophy, the machine around him never slowed down. As Peaky Blinders grew into a global phenomenon, Murphy's face was plastered on t-shirts, posters, fan art, and social media edits. Thomas Shelby became more than a character, he became a symbol. Cool, tough, iconic. But Cillian's relationship to the role was more complex. He respected it. He gave everything to it. But he never confused Thomas Shelby's image with who he was inside. In interviews, he's admitted how hard it became to carry that role season after season. Every new chapter of Shelby's story demanded more weight, more pain, more intensity, and Cillian, ever the perfectionist, gave all of himself to it. What he was left with, at the end of it all, was a collection of brilliant performances and a quiet exhaustion. That same exhaustion followed him into Oppenheimer. Perhaps even deeper this time, because J. Robert Oppenheimer wasn't just complicated on screen, he was complicated emotionally, historically, morally. Spending 6 months inside that character meant carrying the weight of atomic violence, betrayal, insecurity, regret. Murphy told Carolyn Gaspich he often went days without eating properly, slept little, and spent most of his time offset alone. He was giving everything again. And it burned him out, so when all of it was over and Oppenheimer became a mega hit, everyone expected him to springboard into a dozen new projects. But instead, Cillian surprised us all. He chose stillness. He chose on purpose to go home. There's something beautiful about that. The idea that an artist, even amid success, can sit down and say, "I've done enough for now. Not enough to quit. Not enough to run away. Just enough to rest." He doesn't owe anyone more. It's not chasing more fame. And for the first time, he's letting himself simply exist outside of the hustle. He talked about wanting to spend more time with his sons, who are now reaching an age where time together really matters. About wanting to walk his dog, stay up late with his wife, drink tea without reading lines between sips. These aren't dramatic goals, but they're deeply human. And maybe, for Murphy, that's where the real story begins. His decision also speaks to something many people feel but don't have words for. That pressure in modern life to push and produce constantly. To post, to climb, to glow up one more time. Cillian's choice to step back is a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pause. Not because you're weak, but because you know your worth isn't tied to your output. That kind of clarity doesn't come easily. It comes after years in the whirlwind. After applause that doesn't quite fill you. After red carpets and lonely hotel rooms, after tears on set, and missed moments at home. Murphy's decision is quiet on the surface, but underneath, it's incredibly powerful. It's an artist choosing himself, his peace, his family. His life and fans, surprisingly, have met that decision with love. There's no backlash, no public outcry, just support and a very deep sense of understanding. Because watching Cillian Murphy over the years, we didn't just fall in love with the characters he played. We recognized the humanity he brought to every role. That gentle soul hiding behind sharp jawlines and piercing eyes. The man behind Shelby's rage and Oppenheimer's silence. This new chapter of his life, whatever it becomes, feels like he's finally stepping into the person he's always been behind the camera. The boy from Cork who never wanted to be famous, just fulfilled. The artist who sees acting as a craft, not a cult. The man who loves his privacy more than his press. And here's the truth. Actors like him are rare. Actors who refuse to become caricatures of themselves. Who guard their spirit even when the cameras roll. And now, Murphy's legacy grows even larger not because of another movie, but because of his choice not to do one. For younger actors watching him now, his choice becomes a quiet blueprint. A reminder that longevity and soul matter more than speed, that it's okay to choose family over fame, well-being over work. That walking away doesn't mean giving up, it can mean growing up. So, is this the end of Cillian Murphy on the big screen? No, not at all. He may return soon or maybe much later. But what's important is how he returns. On his own terms. With something real to say. Not as a machine firing off roles for awards chatter, but as someone who's lived enough to know what a story truly needs, and whatever form his next story takes on screen. On stage or far away from cameras altogether, it'll likely be unlike anything we've come to expect. Because that's who Cillian Murphy has always been. Unpredictable. Brilliant, still.